Welcome to We Question and Learn. We're celebrating our 18th year. I stuttered a bit when I think about that because we've had some very interesting people across almost a couple of decades, and today will be no different. Today we have Pau Vojtek, and he's the CEO of the Erie Water Works. And we have a double guest, meaning that Dan Bensur, who's the chair of the board there, has agreed to join us today. Greetings, both of you.
Hello.
Good to hear you.
Good morning, Tom.
Dan, good to hear you as well. Let's talk a little bit about history. This program goes far afield across, I'm going to say right now, 12 different podcast venues. So there may be somebody who's remembering Erie, Pennsylvania, or another waterworks who would like to hear about what Erie is doing, because this is an award-winning organization. You've accomplished something. And Paul, can you address that? And it's relative to being with your renovation of an existing facility. Am I right?
Yeah, Tom. Our primary water treatment plant was named after a long-time employee and former board member, Richard S. Wozleski, and that name might sound familiar to people that lived in Erie for a while. But it's our primary water treatment plant. And a few years ago, we embarked on a three-phase project to fully renovate that. And at the completion of the second phase, which was the renovation of the treatment process itself, where we added state-of-the-art membrane water filtration, we were given the Pennsylvania engineering landmark for that project. It was the largest conversion project ever attempted in the United States. We converted it from a traditional sand-based filtration system to as I said, state-of-the-art membrane filtration system, which actually adds a physical barrier in the water treatment process, which is, produces the finest quality water that can be produced by any municipal system. And we're very proud of that. Right now we're on the third phase of it, which is the building itself. And that's expected to be done in about 18 months. Mm-hmm. And all combined, we'll probably have invested about $78 million in that project down there. But for the people of Erie and the businesses of Erie, it will produce, for decades to come, the highest quality water possible from a municipal system. So we're very proud of that project.
I remember Pittsburgh a bunch of years ago bragging about the same thing. I can ask then, this is the latest, greatest state-of-the-art system. That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, for a municipal system the size of ours, you could find something like little small incubator sites that might have something a little bit different, but for a municipal system that serves almost 220,000 people on a day-to-day basis, it is the finest water that you can get out of a public water supply.
Well, be careful. The bottled water folks are going to be disappointed because they're probably going to get a better product out of the tap.
Well,
I shouldn't have said that.
That's interesting, Tom. We definitely have more regulations we have to abide by than the bottled water industry does. So I think we hold our own against them.
We're not dissing them. We're just saying that we're telling folks don't be afraid to fill your water bottle out of the tap in Erie, Pennsylvania, right, which is a good thing. Let's talk about your structure. Oh, go ahead.
No, I wanted to say, Tom, that two things that are really important would be that, when we talk about this, our water is actually at a factor that is so much more times pure than required by quote unquote law. And we're very, very proud of that. And to that end, it is, in fact, actually by regulation, much, much better by quality standards than bottled water. So
I wasn't wrong. I wasn't wrong then.
No, you're not.
Wow,
you're not at all. And I wanted to make sure we made that clear.
Thank you.
Our water, when I see people buying bottled water, I'm like, what are you doing? Water out of your tap is much better for it.
Yeah, making it clear. That was an unintended pun, but that was very good.
Yeah, there you
It's
go.
Always fun to talk to both of you. Paul, tell us about your staff, and then we'll move on and chat with Dan about the board. How many folks do you have working at Erie Water Works?
It's interesting, Tom. I came up here from Pittsburgh in 1998, December of 98, 99. And we were about 148 employees. Currently, we're about 115. We've gotten a little bit leaner and meaner. One of the things I tell people all the time, I said, my best trait is I hire good people.
There you go.
And, the employees we have doing the day-to-day work are outstanding. We have a very fine group of men and women that serve the people of Erie, basically Erie County, on a day-to-day basis. We have a little saying here that says, if you take your water for granted, that we're doing our job. And that's the way we look at it.
Yeah.
A lot of people just, as long as you turn on the spigot and the water comes out, we have a record of not having anybody out of water for more than 24 hours, even in the dead of winter when water pipes seem to be bursting everywhere. But we do have a good staff. And then on the inside, on the management side, we have a handful of professional engineers that work here to make sure the water quality and the distribution of that water is done on the efficient and effective way. We have a number of people with advanced degrees and things like that from the business end. And we're just real proud. We have like I say, about 115 employees, and they just do a great job. And especially, Tom, during this pandemic, when there was a lot of disruption and interruption to businesses and things, our folks kept coming in, day after day, and making sure that the people had water for, cleaning, for bathing, for drinking, for cooking. But also an important component of providing public water service is fire hydrants. A lot of people don't think about that.
That's right.
But making sure that, especially during the pandemic when there was so much uncertainty, when things were closed down and all that, you didn't know what to expect. But to make sure that fire hydrants were available in case there was any emergencies, things like that, that's a big component of what we do. And I think our staff and our crew, they performed admirably during that time, and I couldn't be more proud of it to be working with a group that we have here.
Well, your history goes back to 1815. I'm looking at a picture of a building there, and those were shallow wells and rather I don't want to amateurish or almost down to earth. Oh, that was a bad pun too. Way of bringing
down
water.
to earth. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And then I saw the photo here of Big Bertha in 1910, and about 4 years ago I went up to Buffalo to their water intake facility that was remodeled, I believe, into a museum. I have not seen yours, but I've seen that. That still operates, the Big Bertha?
Big Bertha does not.
Oh,
that's number
okay.
6.
Okay.
I think Buffalo has the first 5, though. To be honest with you, if you saw Buffalo's, you know exactly what you'd be seeing here.
Now, is that still standing? It's inoperative, but is it still standing somewhere in the building?
Yeah, if you drive down the bayfront, even at night, we have some lights on it and things to try to illuminate it at night for people to see. And, we have 3-story high windows, glass windows.
Yes,
you can see inside the building. It's in the building. It's housed in the building on the south side of the bayfront, down here at our Chestnut Street campus, down at the foot of Chestnut Street.
Well, having been right up against one of those, it's fascinating, and it's interesting that you said you had the 6th one, right? 5 in Buffalo. Yes. That's a good piece of history. Yeah. Don't tear that down. That'll become interesting over the next 50 to 100 years.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see. Yeah.
Yeah. But now let's go ahead.
Let me add, Tom, that, I remember, and I can kind of segue right into our board, but I can remember years ago when people would actually ask, do you actually use that building? And that building looks like it's something you don't use. And the one end of the building was literally open and it was not in great repair. And, that was at a time where there was dollars being invested into every part of our system so that it would be brought up to a standard which literally, we look at as a standard to lead from the perspective of our water is the best water in the nation, by far. We feel that way and we can hold that up. But there were dollars that were invested into the building because some of our key equipment is in that building. And then the decision was made at that time to actually say, well, we're going to preserve that end of the building where Big Bertha is and make sure that we keep it for posterity, for history, and that people would be able to drive down the bayfront, see it lit up at night and go, wow, that's just amazing.
That's part of the deal, right? Yeah.
It's part of the deal. Our board, just to kind of segue, our board is made up of 9 members of the community that have just, give a lot of their time, energy, and effort, and their individual expertise as far as, their backgrounds when it comes to, finance or engineering or, management or law or, looking at things from a perspective of community aspects and community involvement. And, we've got a great board, and it's made up of, like I said, members that really show a great diversity of who Erie and the Erie area is. I actually happen to represent our, Mill Creek, and we have other representatives that represent Harbor Creek, that represent the city, and, that represent our, our whole distribution area. And, very excited. Great great board members. I happen to, again, I've known Paul almost since he arrived on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And currently, off and on, I've had a couple different tenures on the board, but a lot of history and a lot of very, very proud moments. Very excited to be able to serve in this capacity.
The interesting thing you said,
Tom,
go ahead.
I say, Tom, yeah, Dan's known me all that time. As I said, I moved up here in '99. Our daughters played softball together. So even before there was any Erie Water Works connection, we were coaches together for our daughter's softball team, which takes us all the way back to '99. So that's interesting.
It's a family organization. You have all Erie people. You have an Erie board, and Dan, let me compliment you. I just heard you say something that I hadn't heard other boards do, and that you have people representing the different, let me say, territories, so to speak, the different portions of the service area. I find that very interesting. Everybody has a word in, so to speak, at a board meeting.
Well, they do. And it's important, from a board perspective, it's also important from our governance perspective that, our ratepayers are represented by, individuals who are their neighbors. And in this case, that's the way that we're made up. And it does give a voice to everyone that's in our system. And it definitely, is a way that we also feel we get, a great mix of people with a lot of diversity of background.
Let's talk about the way things were, say, 5 years ago to today. How much you spent? Quite a bit of money. Can I ask that question?
Yeah. Yes. We spent a lot of money. We have two huge projects going on right now.
Yes.
As I said, phase 3 of that Wazaleski water treatment plant is ongoing. And then also the total renovation of our Cherry Street pump station, which is located just south of, just south of the center of city there at 26th Street. Yep. It's on Grandview, but it's up right in the middle of the city.
Yes.
And I think the Cherry Street's about $12 million, and the Wazaleski plant, as I said, will be about $78 million when it's all said and done. But it's the continuing changes in regulations that we are preparing for. And as I said, with the membrane system, we should be good to go from a water quality perspective for decades. The Cherry Street station that we're doing, that we're replacing equipment that was installed in the 1950s. And, it kind of creeps up on you. I used to think it was 50 years old, but all of a sudden now it's 70 years old.
Yeah.
Equipment. So we're way more efficient, way more reliable. As Dan would ask me sometimes, and the board would ask, what keeps you up at night? And I said, the thing that kept me up was that Cherry Street pump station. It's a very vital component of our total distribution system. We're addressing it now. And, totally, Tom, if you go back to when the authority was created back in 1992 to take over operation of the city's water system, there's been over $400 million invested in the system to bring it up to, to respectability and like you say, state of the art. And it has been a work in progress, and we're very proud of the progress we've made. And people again, we talk about water quality. We're making sure that people have water when they turn on the spigot, and it's going to be safe and reliable for them to use.
This may be a little a tougher question, so to speak. How does your budget? What's your revenue source as you roll along, and how is everything else funded?
Well, we're funded. We don't have any tax dollars that come into us. It's all funded by ratepayers. We're working on our 2022 budget now. We're probably looking at about $42 million is our budget. Of course, a lot of that goes towards debt service that's related to these capital improvements. We talked, that I mentioned the $400 million in the last, 26 years, 27 years. It's funded by that and fees, people, making a tap, they have to pay for the cost of it or whatnot. But it's totally, ratepayer based revenues. I'm happy to say that our rates are probably about middle of the road in Pennsylvania. We used to be far on the low end, but as things came up and we had to do things, inherently you have to increase, rates, not significantly, but to keep up with what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. So we've been able to do that in a relatively inexpensive way. And one of the things, Tom, that we do here as an authority, where you might hear in the gas company or some of these other utilities that are private companies,
Mm-hmm.
they actually are allowed to build in a return on their investment.
Yes.
Here at the Waterworks,
Yeah.
we're basically required to use a cost of service, meaning whatever it costs, that's all we're allowed to charge.
And we know what that's like. Yep.
Yeah. So there's no extra there for investor return or shareholder income. We basically charge what it costs us to run the system and provide this high quality water.
This is going to be this is an interesting question for me. Forgive me. How do you design all this? This is your folks? Do you hire a consultant? I'm going to say there's probably people that have come from all over to help you engineer the renovation. Give me a snapshot of how all that came about.
I'll give a little bit that I'm sure Dan.
Yeah, either one.
On that as well.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I have to say this: that the people that initially put this system together, and it's an interesting system because, as you know, the landscape goes up gradually from the lake. So as you get further south, you get higher elevations, and then we could only go until we hit the Great Lakes Divide. We really can't pump water over the crest, right?
Right.
So everything's pumped up, and then it flows back naturally through gravity. So there's smarter people than me out there, engineers that have designed these things.
Okay.
And then like I say, the staff we have on, and then we're required to have a consulting engineer as well, a third party to make sure that everything's done properly. They keep everything going.
It's not like you have to reinvent the wheel. This system was functional 100 years ago, or
yes.
It was a good design, and it's still functional today.
Yeah. And we've expanded it, and you apply the basics of hydraulics, and we've gone out. If you think about it, you say 150 years. The city only went up to 19th Street 150 years ago.
It did,
so
yeah.
there wasn't.
There were still canals going up the hill too. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
One of the things, just to kind of jump in, one of the things that I really give it to the staff, and as far as accolades. There has been a long-term commitment to strategic planning and getting, the whole team involved and getting the engineers and the external resources we need involved to say, where will we be in 5 years? Mm-hmm. Where will we be in 10 years? Where will we be in 20 years? And what that allows us to do is to look at these major projects and really look at it from the perspective of, okay, what is going to be our needs and how we meet them? And as we do that, our group actually goes out into the community where we are connected and providing water, and then out into the community where we could provide water. Let's say, for example, Lake City, Girard, and say to those folks out there, hey, would you like us to provide you water? Because it clearly looks like, with the challenges you have in your system, that it might be better for your ratepayers if we were to, come in and provide that water. Much like we did a few years ago and very successfully in Mill Creek. So, we really look at things from a strategic perspective, because what that does is it drives the engineering, it drives the budgeting, and it drives then a process of, well, what is most important and how are we going to accomplish that to make sure that, again, we can guarantee a continuous, uninterrupted, reasonably priced supply of quality water to our customers, which assure public health while promoting regional stability and future development. And which happens to be our mission statement.
Which happens to be our mission statement, right?
Exactly.
That sounded familiar.
Thank you for getting that in there. But the water plant, the sewage, these aren't the only things that you have to take care of. Pipes break. How do you manage all that? I don't think people understand how difficult that is.
Yeah, recent improvements in technology have afforded us the ability to track these things. We have a GIS system, which is an acronym for Geographic Information Systems. And, over the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we've had our entire system down to the smallest pipe inputted into this GIS system that we then track anywhere where there's, breaks or low pressure calls or things like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that people don't realize is some of the higher elevations. You would think breaks would occur in the lower elevations where the pressure is the highest.
Yeah.
But water tends to give off oxygen when it changes temperature, and so we also have a program that goes to looking at air relief valves. So you go to the high points. It's interesting, the high points, and the breaks look different. We study the breaks. Pressure breaks typically look like a little bit like an S shape where a pipe will split.
Yeah.
And breaks that occur because of elevation changes would be look more like in joints where they would separate. And we look at things like that. So we do track things. We try to predict, with our asset management system, we look at things and try to predict where our bad areas are at based on the year the pipe was manufactured. There's areas of the system that we know have water mains that were made during the wars, which they use thinner lines, like the piping isn't as thick.
Yes.
And we know those are prone to more breaks. And with this GIS system, we've been able to capture a lot of data that is then analyzed regularly. And we try to be proactive as much as we can. However, with the severe changes in temperature that we experience in Erie here, come wintertime, it's almost hard to avoid, the pipes breaking from. What a lot of people don't realize is when the ground freezes, the ground actually acts as a shock absorber. Because if you know, most pipes are under the roads, right, under the streets. Yeah. So when you have potholes that are created during the plowing and all that, you have truck traffic and car traffic, and it's just pounding on these pipes. And that's what tends to lead to a lot of breaks. You just can't predict those things.
As my physics professor used to say to me, water is incompressible.
So, yeah, exactly. And it's all under pressure. And again, I have to say this too, another plug for our folks that work out there. They work at all hours in the worst conditions. Most of the time they're wet and it's cold, and they get the job done. And like I said, we have a thing that we don't want to have anybody without water service for 24 hours. Yeah. We've been able to live by that. And the people that do that work are just phenomenal, especially come wintertime. They just do a great job.
Before my physics professor lectures me, the system can be pressurized, but water is not compressible. That's what you're saying.
Yes, you can't compress it, right? You can't, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not like gas, or you can't squeeze more into the pipes.
You can't squeeze
it,
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what it is. Okay, let's talk about funding, logistics. Dan, you're on the board, and this was a major project. Now, a project as this has a long, long life, so it's not like you went out and took a credit card and spent this willy-nilly. You analyzed the costs. You understood what you were building. How does this all get taken care of now and over the long run?
Well, from a funding perspective, we've been very fortunate that, again, Paul and the team put together the needs as far as what we're going to be looking at. Everything, of course, is bid out to very specific standards as far as the way that we find what's going to cost once we do get the budget in place. Mm-hmm. But then, obviously, we have to go and look at, let's try to look at what we can do from a bonding perspective. Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, it is, let's find money the least expensive way possible. And we've worked regionally with a couple different funding sources who over the years have really helped us really drive down the cost of borrowing and, very aggressively drive down that cost so that it is at the lowest possible rate we can get it to. And from that perspective, again, it comes down to, all right, well, now we know that based on those dollars that we owe and based on these projects we're going to do, we can predict long term what it is that we're going to be looking at more than less as far as with reasonable increases in our rates, we will be able to grow, maintain, and make the system continually better. And that's the most important part because, now, as Paul said, when you really think about it, our system is by far one of the highest quality, most advanced municipal water systems in the country. And that's something that people go, in Erie? And I said, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The system and the way that water was filtrated originally, a lot of that was invented here in Erie a long time ago. Wow. And today, the way we deliver it, and we're very proud of that, and the way that we process the water is also at the standard, which is the highest standard. And very, very excited about that as well.
I've seen systems glued together over the years, and I think Paul will know what I'm talking about. You can only weld so many things and dig so many holes to the point where the cost exceeds the logic of putting a new state-of-the-art system in. Am I close?
Yeah, that's part of the evaluation and part of the analysis is how much does it cost versus the cost of replacing things. What's maintenance versus replacement cost, and that's a huge part. And as I would be remiss if I didn't say, we have our chairman on here, that the board has been extremely supportive of the efforts of our staff and our, as Dan said, our consultants. We've done our best to try to maintain reasonable water rates while doing a lot of improvements. And it's been a good teamwork between the board and staff, and then the third-party consultants.
With a few minutes left, I'm going to ask one last question, if you don't mind. We serve a huge industrial base. They're pretty happy with you, I hear.
Well, I would say that because we keep the rates somewhat reasonable, and we try to do rates in 5-year rate studies, where I said cost of service.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, Tom, and I tell you this, that businesses love to have the predictability for their budgeting purposes.
Absolutely.
So they really appreciate the 5-year rate structure. Mm-hmm. And I think the quality of water that we deliver, whether it's to industry or commercial or residential, is just, as Dan mentioned, I mentioned, it's just top quality. So from a business perspective, from an industrial perspective, they know what they're getting. It's a very it's very it stays the same. It's it's very predictable, and the cost is put out in 5-year increments where then they can budget. So it's very reliable, dependable, and I think that's what keeps everybody
That's
happy.
a good thing to hear from a utility. I think that's fabulous. Dan, as the board chair, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make on your end of the deal here?
Well, I am very proud of the organization and the work they do every day. It's not too many organizations that can say that in their lifetime, they have reduced the amount of staff, increased the amount of service, and the value and the quality of the product has gone up by a multiple. So from that perspective, when you look at the win-win-win, and the reliability, just very, very excited to say that the Erie Water Works really is the shining beacon locally when it comes to municipal authorities, as far as a model for success. And it's great cooperation amongst the staff and board, and also a commitment to challenging each other to find ways to do it better. And we'll continue to work that way. Very excited and proud to be able to serve.
Well, you know what? People take for granted that water runs as soon as you open the tap, let alone now we can be assured of the quality that's coming out to the consumer.
Like I said, Tom, if you take it for granted, we're doing our job.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm trying to encourage people to show a touch of appreciation for the hard work. Dan Bensur, the chair of the board there, thank you for being on the air today. Pau Vojtek, CEO, it's always good to talk to you. I'm going to buzz you guys in a couple months and have you do part 2, if that's okay. Because I think we,
fantastic.
We missed a couple of things.
And an honor. Thank you,
my gosh, it would be great to have you back, and let's do this after winter, and then talk more about how everything's run structurally, organizationally, et cetera. Thank you very much, both, for being on the air.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle Martin. These days, it seems like just about everybody is choosing sides and doubling down on talking points. Here at NPR, we try to cut through the noise with meaningful and respectful discussions with people from all perspectives, backgrounds, and walks of life. Join the conversation every weekend on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Saturday and Sunday afternoons at 5 on WQLN Radio.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. I am honored today to be speaking with Bobby Borgia, who's been thrilling people and entertaining people for 30 years. He's a live performer. I love this because Bobby's been in 70 countries. Bob, you have to count continents, not countries now. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't get that far. I'm still jet lagged.
Anyways, everybody will know him from Masters of Illusion on ABC and a bunch of ABC's The Greatest Magic of Las Vegas. And I got to tell you, it's a real honor to be speaking with you today here on WQLN Radio. Hey, now let's go back those 30 years. This is the question that throws you off a little bit.
Yes.
How did you start? I mean, really start?
In the magic?
Yeah. How did this attack
Tom,
you?
I was tricked into it.
You were what?
That's a little joke.
That was
Tom.
a pun.
I was tricked into it. I will tell you the truth. I'm going to really tell you the truth.
I promised you that I would fall for your one-liners, and I did.
I don't know if that worked, but
it worked good.
So in reality, when I was a little boy, about 5 years old, I had a younger brother. He was a year younger than me. His name was Anthony Scott Borgia, and he was the first successful liver transplant in the United States. They had it in the Walter Cronkite Evening News, and they were doing fundraisers, and this was a big deal in the country. So he ended up having the transplant, and 3 months later he passed away of an embolism or whatever the complications were. So I'm 5. I don't know where my little brother went. I think he disappeared. And in reality, what I think is, or what I really know in my soul, is that magic filled this void to be alive again. Because I don't know what death is. Boy, this is a great way to start a.
Oh no, this is very good, because this is reality. This is history.
It was like I saw Doug Henning, who was an amazing magician back in the the 70s and early 80s. Doug Henning was on Captain Kangaroo.
Oh, now you're in my era.
Hi, and like Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah.
And that man, when I saw that, filled that void of thinking my brother disappeared, where it went. That filled the void, and that's how I was bit by magic. And I will tell you one thing for sure: at that moment in time, at 5 or 6, I knew one thing. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It was it was a blessing in disguise, is what it was. There was a mysterious figure that kept popping in and out of my life, or a name. And when I was about 15 or 16 years old, I was working at a restaurant here in Erie. It was called the Station Restaurant. I was the house magician, basically. I was a kid. I'm walking around to the tables, doing magic tricks with my little tuxedo on, and I would meet all kinds of great people. And I met one woman, and she was like, "Young man, do you know who my uncle was?" And I said, "No, I don't." She said, "My uncle was Harry Keller." And I went, "Wow." And I went, "Wait a minute." And that's where I discovered about a gentleman that was born here in Erie, PA, that became the greatest magician in the history of magic, and started magic. And till this day today, he's known as the Dean of American Magicians. And his name is Mr. Harry Keller. And Harry Keller was he basically was born in 1849 here in Erie, PA, 75 13th Street, right near Griswold Park, if you will. Harry Keller was, he inspired and mentored Harry Houdini's entire career. As a matter of fact, they were such close friends that Houdini looked up to him as like an uncle, if you will. And Harry Houdini called him our greatest American magician, which was really interesting. So before Houdini, so he's the Dean of American Magicians. But what's really amazing is he invented magic that never existed. So the first thing is, when you think of a magician, you always think of a top hat and a tuxedo. It's because of Harry Keller. He would always dress in his top hat and his tuxedo and his coat. He was the first magician, American magician, to levitate a woman. So that never existed. He created this amazing apparatus that created this illusion of levitating a woman. He called it the Princess of Karnak. It was amazing. The other thing that I think is the coolest to me is, how Jamestown is the home of Lucille Ball, right? Each city has, there's Dan Rice and Gerard. He was the clown, the first Ringling Brothers clown. L. Frank Baum. Does that name ring a bell to anybody out there?
We're going to let you explain it.
L. Frank Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that's right.
No, don't know if you heard of The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz was written by L. Frank Baum, and Harry Keller was the inspiration for The Wizard. So when L. Frank Baum wrote the book, he saw Harry Keller's show and was mesmerized, and he based The Wizard on Harry Keller. And so much for they had him stand, and they did some drawings, cartoon drawings of Harry in the first book, and you can actually see, the artwork with him and Dorothy and Toad, and it's actually Harry Keller. He would come back to Erie with his huge illusion show, and magic was it was just starting to peak, at that time, but he's the first guy that made it. He became an international star. Now think about this. There was, before airplanes, no internet, nothing. This guy was famous worldwide. That's how big Harry Keller really was. I knew this my whole life. And I wanted to, because of that seed being planted with Catherine Keller, his niece, that was his niece that lived with him. That seed was planted. I always had this thing in the back of my mind. I always loved where I was born and raised here in Erie, Pennsylvania. Truly, just love Erie. Been around the world, been very blessed to travel, but everybody's like, where's your favorite place? Erie, Pennsylvania. And I knew about this. And, there's a historical plaque in Griswold Park and tells a bit, but nobody really knew. And it was like designing a really detailed and interesting historical magic trick for people to discover and unfold this amazing club that I created around Harry Keller. That, to me, every night when they walk in and they discover, I designed it kind of like a Hard Rock Cafe meets magic. We have a lot of his memorabilia, a lot of some of the letters from Houdini to Keller. And when you read them, it's like, my dearest Dean Keller, I hope this letter finds you well. My travels abroad have been, and Harry Keller talking about vanishing an elephant. And, and it's amazing. I mean, to me, the history of who this guy was and having people in Erie discover this and then build a tourist attraction. This, to me, was to put a light on this gentleman, number one, to get all my famous friends to come here to Erie work, and then to bring the city that I grew up in and that I love very much, this amazing, unique, different, out-of-the-box thinking historical tourist attraction is a blessing. I'm very grateful.
I was fortunate enough, and you were kind enough to offer me a quick tour. What's your favorite up in the store?
I think one of my favorite pictures is where he is. There's two of them. There's one, the classic picture of, it's like a portrait. He made the golden age of magic posters famous. So his first one was like a portrait with these two little red devils that were sitting on his shoulder, whispering in his ear. They were called Whispering Imps, because every magician after that paid homage to Keller and had the Whispering Imps. So when you watch the old magic posters, you'll see these little red, they look like little, devil, cherub, gremlin type creatures, these supernatural little things that are whispering the secrets of magic in his ear. And they're called Whispering Imps. And it started with Keller. And I don't know. He has another one where he's walking through the woods, and there are about 7 or 8 of these imps hiding behind trees and looking over Keller's shoulder. So that became the golden age of magic posters, and the artwork alone. It's pure art. And there's a museum in Toronto and Montreal of just the historical golden age magic posters. They're phenomenally beautiful. So to design it part museum, part restaurant, part bar, part showroom, I just wanted to do something different. I don't ever want to do and create anything that's already existed. So I took a chance, and everybody said I was insane. I told my friends, like, you can't do that here. I go, what? What do you mean? They kept saying, you can't do that in Erie. And I went, say it again. Tell me that one more time. And
that was it, right?
That was it, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Keller, his personal life history as you know it.
He was born here in Erie, PA in 1849. He was about 11 or 12. There were two great things about stories. One of them was he worked at a pharmacy. It was called Carter's Drugs, I believe, or Carter's Pharmacy. And that was on South Park Row, downtown Erie, PA. And he was in charge of, he's a kid, and they would tell him how to do all this stuff. Well, he was putting together an idea for a little thing, and he blew a hole in the basement. He blew a hole in the ceiling of the basement, trying to create this. And literally, there's rumors that there's still this hole in the building, but that's where his first job was, at Carter's Pharmacy or Carter's Drugs on South Park Row. And the other one was he would play chicken with the train. So you know where the train station is. Yep. His house was right it's at 13th Street. The train station's on 14th. Mm-hmm. So he would run over as a kid and he would play chicken, and he would, dare all his friends. He would like this little daredevil. And I think that's where his daredevilness came from before he moved to Buffalo.
Gotcha.
He didn't have a career that was all of a sudden he's this huge star. He had so many struggles when he went over to England. He got to study at Egyptian Hall with a magician named Jasper Maskelyne. Jasper Maskelyne is, as a matter of fact, they're in production right now. They're making a movie. It's a true story. It's called The War Magician. It's a book by David Fisher. Mm-hmm. And The War Magician is a true story about Jasper Maskelyne creating and using illusions to win the war, making bridges invisible, making tanks look like there were hundreds instead of 10, vanishing the city and moving the city to 80 miles away. So these planes were flying over, bombing the middle of nowhere. It's a true story. And it's Benedict Cumberbatch is playing Jasper Maskelyne. This is where Keller started learning and apprenticing a bit of his skills, but he lost all his equipment during a shipwreck, lost everything, all his props, everything. The only thing he had was a ring on his finger, and he pawned it and started from scratch. There's a really interesting background with him.
And with that said, what happened? Well, forgive me. What happened after that? How did he get to fame and fortune, so to speak? You mentioned it was rough going back then because there was no internet, no media, no television, nothing. You had to do all your promotion by driving around. How did they get around?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Train.
The trains. There's a lot of history that I'm probably not hitting accurately as far as the Davenport brothers they were spiritualists. They did a magic show based around a magic cabinet that instruments would come alive and all these things. And he did work with them for a while. But there's a man from Erie, Bill Measle, who unfortunately passed away, and an amazing historian in Los Angeles named Mike Caveney. And they just wrote a book about 10 years ago, I think, and it's called Keller's Wonders. It's I think they only made 600 copies, and it's huge. I mean, it's a very thick book that really goes into the detail of how he met his wife from Australia, Ava, how he struggled. I mean, there's the struggle that he went through and the backstabbing of all these other magicians was it was pretty fierce back then. Nothing's changed, Tom, by the way.
Yes.
Nothing has changed till this day in the magic world.
Yeah. Okay. We see now today, not one program on television, but I count at least 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Could you frame where the world of magic has come from and where it's going?
I think magic it is the oldest art form known to man. I mean, they've dated it back beyond the Egyptians with a magician named Didi. But today, coming to present time, I just finished an amazing project that they did a survey on magic, and I already knew what I'm about to tell you. Look at magic in our culture. Harry Potter is probably one of the biggest movie franchises in the world ever.
Yes.
Harry Potter, all about magic. As far as performance magic on TV, David Blaine really, thought outside of the box and turned the camera on people. We have Penn and Teller, David Copperfield, Siegfried and Roy, Chris Angel, Darren Brown, the Carbonaro Effect, Justin Willman. I mean, it goes on and on and on. As a matter of fact, there's a new thing on Hulu, Derek Delgadio, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's called In and of Itself. Really amazing series, special. He did it on Broadway. Frank Oz directed it. My point being is magic is so hot right now. There are 4 movies in production right at this moment. One of them is a movie on Houdini about him being a spy, like a true backstory on that he might have been a spy. The second is a Netflix series based on Harry Houdini, and it's going to be done by the escapes my name, Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer of Pirates of the Caribbean, is doing a series on Netflix about Houdini. The War Magician, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, is in pre-production as we speak. And one of my favorite guys, J.J. Abrams, he's an amazing director, but a huge magic fanatic, more than people really realize. He is doing a movie about a female magician, and it's based on a DC comic that really fascinating. So those are just 4 that I know of. And now you look at all the TV. So magic is, especially what's going on in the world right now. Mm-hmm. I personally think we need magic to, bring a sense of wonder and awe back into people's lives, hearts, souls, bodies, minds, and spirits. I really do.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go a few steps back.
Yes, sir.
When you first got interested in magic, but let's talk about your resume. You're not just a fellow who wanders around the local bars and does tricks anymore. Your career has, and I'm going to be allowed to say, it's exploded. How did you start, and where are you now?
Started, like I said, when I was 6 with the interest of magic.
Yeah.
And, I did magic for like birthday parties and my high school, talent show, a lot of restaurants. When I was 18, I decided I was going to move to New York City.
Wow.
And I did.
Wow.
And right after that, I got hired for this first pretty cool contract, which was in Atlantic City at Resorts International, Merv Griffin's Hotel. There was a big show called Wildfire. It was a Roger Minami production. And I was the magician in that show. I was 19 years old. Couldn't believe this. I mean, it's like a dream. Mm-hmm. I used to perform at all the magic conventions. But if I just took a step back and said, that's where people go, I played Vegas, Atlantic City, Tahoe, Asia, all over Tokyo and Kuala Lumpur and Indonesia, all over Europe. I've traveled the world. I've been very blessed. Every cruise ship, played the Riviera in Las Vegas. Like I said, I mean, that is what you typically think. But my career ended up taking a turn by other things that I had in life. And it's exciting. I started getting into designing and creating magic for television, for concerts, for movies, for cruise ships. So in the music industry, I used to do all the artwork. I was a graphic artist. A friend of mine, who's a very famous magician named Franz Harari, he did all the magic for Michael Jackson's concerts. He would design magic to make Michael vanish in midair and levitate. Michael Jackson was a big magic fanatic. And I realized how much money he was making.
Yeah.
I was getting paid $500 to draw, this crazy apparatus. And I started with Brian McKnight was my first concert, and then Boyz II Men, wow. Casey and JoJo, Destiny's Child, Christina Aguilera, Pink, Usher. It went on and on. I started designing illusions for concerts. Okay. So meaning I could make them appear in the beginning of the concert in a very theatrical way using an illusion, a magic trick. I illustrated the book Idiot's Guide to Magic Tricks. So I used my skills as an artist. My first TV gig was Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman on ABC. Create the magic. And Penn Jillette was the evil magician, and then they put me on screen. The first big one was The Pretender on NBC. I did the movie Now You See It, where I created all the magic for the film. And then Disney hired me to be the host for 3 years and take a behind-the-scenes look of the movie. In the meantime, I was traveling the world working on all these magic specials, like The Greatest Magicians of Las Vegas on NBC and Fox, Masters of Illusion, etc. It took me from designing in front of the camera, behind the camera, movies, Broadway shows. Disney hired me to I did Aladdin, Mary Poppins, Hercules. I mean, I've done more for Disney. I can't even think of it all. I probably have 14 shows for Disney. They would hire me to design. I got to work with the Imagineers. Fascinating, So currently, at this moment right now, Carnival Cruise Line just built the largest ship in their fleet in the world. It's called the Mardi Gras. And this was a 3-year process of them going, all right, they put a roller coaster on the ship.
Wow.
They have 3 theaters. Really amazing. So my point being is I got a call. They flew me to Vegas. We had a charrette. I didn't know what a charrette was. And I walked into the meeting going, raise your hand if anyone knows what a charrette is. I'm like, what's a charrette? So we started with that. And I got hired as a development creative team, entertainment creative team for Carnival. And they wanted to outdo themselves. When I tell you, Tom, who they hired and the team of people, it was like producers from America's Got Talent, the guy from Michael Jackson's This Is It concert, Rob Wagner, Stimulated Inc., the lighting man from Blue Man Group, Brian Monahan, some really amazing people. And they bought a magic show from me, and I wrote, directed, and produced it. It's called M Theory. And M Theory it's an actual theory from Edward Witten, who was a scientist.
Yes.
And its theory was that, there's an 11th dimension to our reality. So what Carnival said is, look, we did a giant survey, and comedy came in number 1 in our entertainment survey. Mm-hmm. I was like, what was number 2? They go, magic. Wow. So their multi-million-dollar production shows were like 5. So I wrote the show. They bought it. They own the rights to it. I produced, directed this, and I have all the magicians starring in this amazing production. They dumped a lot of money into the LED screens. There's 16 of them. They're 3 stories high, all robotic, 7 cameras. It's a state-of-the-art, very out-of-the-box thinking magic show. And they looked at me and said, can you write 3 more? And I'm like, what? So during this shutdown pandemic, I had to build that show through Zoom with a team of 15 people around the world. And that, boy, was that interesting. And the final illusion of this amazing show, it uses the entire ship. And I wanted to create a way to kick the brand in. So they gave me a helicopter film crew. They paid for everything. And we pulled out a port. The thing started filming. We, blocked the shots and had 3D models printed. And so we have now the final illusion is at the end, everything that happens during the show in M Theory, on all these screens, we cut to these drones like fly off the ship with live cameras. And on the outside in the middle of the ocean on the ship, everything is predicted by being painted on the side and the back of the boat. In other words, your grandmother's name. Everything that happened during the show is actually on the outside of this huge mega ship. It's really cool. This was one of the really out of the box thinking illusions I designed in a long time, and I got real excited about it.
Where do you get these ideas? What is your inspiration? Or is it just the cumulative effect of everything you've done over 30 years?
I think so. And I think just trying to challenge myself of, I don't want to come from an ego-based source. I always like to come from that personal power that we all have inside and let it flow through me. Let be that creative. I always loved Prince. To me, Prince was the guy. Like this guy, creative genius that things just flew. And just to be in that zone is, I don't know, I divine power. I don't know what that is, but I'm very grateful. I'm just the catalyst of coming up with ideas, and I get very excited. I still to this day feel like this is like day one on planet Earth. It's so exciting to me waking up and creating these new things and then getting a chance to do it. And then the effect that it has on people, it's lighting them up. I did a TED talk on the power of awe. Mm-hmm. And that to me is what drives me.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely me. It still inspires me to understand, you're an engineer, you're a scientist, you're a designer, you're an artist, and you bring this all under the concept of being a magician, all inspired by one Erie person. I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, the Erie should be so proud of Harry Keller. He, like I said, he's the dean of American magicians, and he would come back to Erie every year. Mm-hmm. He would play the Majestic Theater, which was a very big theater on 10th Street, and do his big illusion show. And he would donate money to the Boys and Girls Home. He would donate money to the Elks Club. He came back every year and would give back to Erie. As a matter of fact, Tom, when we were walking to the club, I pointed on the wall. You saw one of the quotes from the Erie Times, and it was from 1893. And they were like, Keller's show is beyond doubt the greatest mystery marvel of the universe. And this was back in 1893. You know, people still were lit up by magic, and they are today still.
As you look at everything you've done downtown, and I've got to say, that's got to be drawing, or will be drawing, quite a few people into the area. It's a magnet. It's a magnet. What would you call it? I'd call it a mini economic center, if not bigger than that, right? It's a museum, it's art, it's science, and of course, the big deal is it's entertainment.
Yeah, and the coolest new feature is a sleight of hand performance bar. So I worked at a place called the Magic Castle in Hollywood, California. 28 years I worked there because I lived in Hollywood for a very long time. And the Magic Castle is the Academy of Magical Arts and Sciences. It's a private club. There are magicians from all over the world go to perform, and you have to know somebody to get in. You have to wear a suit and tie, no jeans. It's a very exclusive experience. Okay. That's where I worked. So to create something close to that, but in my own brand, in my own experience in life, where Harry Keller, the synchronicity of how Harry Keller came into my life, how I moved back to Erie, how I was on a cruise ship doing my show, and I closed my show with a giant video of Harry Keller. And in the front row was, the Keller family, the Blakeleys, the grandson of the niece of Harry Keller going, Bobby Borgia. And I was like, oh my God. And just to become friends with them and see all the memorabilia and the letters they have in the estate locked away is phenomenal. I was meant to do this. I was meant to create this. And I'm always used to being the guy on stage and my name. And I don't need that. I want to put Harry Keller, make him the star, get all my friends to work and build this amazing experience and tourist destination for Erie, PA. And this weekend, the sleight of hand bar is really interesting. You can come down and you can just watch the top magicians from television. Penn and Teller's Fool Us, America's Got Talent, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Fallon. They're at the bar behind with cameras, and instead of a sports bar and all the screens, you're watching the top sleight of hand magic right underneath your nose. That's the experience. And then you have the showroom, which we have the top magicians, the top comedians, combining the two together. And you walk around and you start discovering history of Erie, Pennsylvania. Just want to do good for the city. I love this place.
What a great way to end the program. I am so thrilled to be talking with you. I've learned so much. I have one last question, but I'm going to save it for your next program. I'm going to invite you to come back, if that's okay with you.
I'm honored. And it was.
I'm going to ask you, though, the tough question, so I'll give you time to prep up. And I'll give you a clue. It wasn't all easy the entire time. You made it sound so simple.
I'm telling you about the icing and
that's right.
On the cake.
So part 2 of this program, the next time I give you a buzz or you give me a buzz, we're going to talk about the reality of show business and the reality of what it takes.
Could we send people to kellersmagic.com?
Yeah.
They can see the club.
This is the part of the program I hate. We're out of time. You know what that sounds like.
I want to say what an honor it was for me, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
It's both ways, and I thank you, Bobby Borgia, for coming back to Erie. We appreciate it.